What's up, everybody? Quint Tatro here, Kentucky Young Investors. Quick question. If I asked you right now, what's a stock? Could you actually explain it? Not just it's a thing on the stock market that goes up and down. I mean, really explain it. What are you actually buying? What do you own? Most adults can't answer that, so don't feel bad if you can't either. By the end of this video, you will. And you're going to understand it better than most grown-ups do because we're going to build the whole idea from scratch using something that you already understand, a lemonade stand. Okay, let's say it's the summer. You and a couple friends from class set up a lemonade stand at the end of your street. Total investment, a folding table, a pitcher, some lemons, sugar, a poster board sign, maybe $20 between the three of you at most. Turns out, though, you make really good lemonade, like banger. Word gets around the neighborhood, lines. By the end of the summer, you are clearing $50, $60 a day. Not bad. Here's the thing about that stand right now. You own it, all of it, 100%. If it makes money, that money is yours. If it makes $100 a week and expenses are $10, that $90 in profit belongs to you and your two friends, split however you agree to split it. That ownership, that's the whole concept we're building toward. Keep that in your head. Ownership of something that makes money. Now, let's say the stand does so well, you think to yourself, what if we opened a second stand on the other side of the neighborhood and then a third downtown? Maybe eventually one in every neighborhood in the city. Great idea. One big problem, money. A folding table, a pitcher is cheap, but 5 stands means 5 tables, 5 sets of supplies. Maybe you need a cart. Maybe you need to buy lemons in bulk. Maybe you need to pay a couple of other kids to run the stands. You can't personally staff. That costs real money, more than 3 teenagers have sitting around. So where does the money come from? This is where almost every business in the world, from lemonade stands to Apple Computer, hits the exact same fork in the road. You need capital, which is just a fancy word for money used to grow a business. You have basically 3 ways to get it. Option 1, usually the first stop, friends and family, right? You go to your parents, your grandparents, maybe an aunt, thinks you're hilarious, and says, hey, you say, hey, give us $500 to buy carts and supplies for 2 more of these stands. You know how awesome our lemonade is, and we'll pay you back plus a little extra once we're profitable. Or maybe you offer them something even better, a piece of the business itself. Give us the money. In exchange, you own 10% of the lemonade stand company. If we do well, you do well, right? That's ownership in the business. Well, that second version, giving someone a piece of ownership in exchange for money, this is a really important idea. We'll come back to this in about 30 seconds. So you've hit all your family and friends and so on and so forth, but maybe they don't have any money. They're like, we can't do anything. How about the next set? It's called an angel investor. That is just a person, often someone who's already made money in businesses, who believes in a young company enough to write a check, usually in exchange for a piece of ownership. Angels aren't a bank and they're not family, but they are betting on you, the entrepreneur. Now, let's say the lemonade stand company, and by now it might genuinely deserve that name, company, has 5 locations around the city and wants to hit 15. Friends and family have already chipped in what they can. Time for option 2, a traditional bank loan. You'd walk into the local bank, show them your financials or your numbers, how much you're making, how consistent it's been, and you'd ask to, say, borrow $10,000. You'd open 10 more stands. The bank isn't buying a piece of your company. They don't care about you becoming the next Coca-Cola. They just want their $10,000 back plus interest on a schedule, whether your business explodes in popularity or barely survives. The key difference to lock in here, a loan is debt. You owe it back no matter what happens. Selling ownership is different. Nobody's guaranteed anything, but if the company does great, everyone who owns a piece, well, they do great too. Okay, stay with me. Citywide expansion is done. 15 stands. They're running well. Genuinely a real business now. But you've got a bigger ambitions. You want this thing statewide. Heck, you want this thing national. Here's the big problem. The numbers involved are no longer like Ask Grandma or Ask the Local Bank numbers. Opening lemonade stands, or by this point, maybe actual retail locations in every state, could cost tens of millions of dollars. No local bank is writing that check, and no group of angel investors has that kind of cash sitting around either. So what do you do when you need an amount of money too large for individuals or a local bank to provide? Well, you go to Wall Street. Specifically, you go to an investment bank. An investment bank's job in this situation is to help a private company sell pieces of itself to the public, or basically anyone in the country who wants to buy in order to raise large amounts of money all at once. This process has a name. You've probably heard of it, an initial public offering, or IPO. Before any of that happens, though, the investment bank has to answer a few questions that sound simple, but actually are really hard. What is the entire lemonade company worth? Not one stand, the whole thing, every location, every future stand you might ever open. This is called a valuation, and bankers look at things like how much money the company currently makes, how fast it's growing, how big the market for lemonade actually is in the entire country. All right. Let's just say, for the sake of this story, the investment bank determines that your little lemonade stand, which is now a company and all over the place, is worth $100 million. All right, it's not just a stand on the end of the street anymore. Once you know that, you decide how many total pieces to cut that company into. Now, let's say the founders decide to split ownership into 10 million equal pieces. Each one of those pieces is worth $10. 100 million divided by 10 million. Congratulations, you've just invented the stock. A share of stock is simply one of those equal pieces of ownership in a company. On IPO day, the company sells some portion of those 10 million shares, not all of them usually, to the public through the stock market. Anyone with a brokerage account anywhere in the country can now buy a piece of the lemonade company for $10 a share. Buy one share, you own a tiny, tiny fraction of the whole business. Buy 1,000 shares, you clearly own a bigger fraction of that business. The company walks away from that IPO with a huge pile of cash. Money it uses to open stands in all 50 states. And the people who buy shares now own a piece of something of that. If the company keeps growing, keeps getting more valuable, well, they make more money. If the lemonade company is worth $100 million this year and $200 million in 5 years, because it's now the biggest lemonade stand in America, every single share is now worth twice as much. That's the gain for a shareholder. And this really is the same lemonade stand from the start of this video. Same idea, same folding table. It just grew up, needed money at every stage, bigger than the last, and eventually got big enough that regular people all over the country could each own a tiny slice of it. So next time someone says, I bought a stock, here's what you know now that most people never bother to learn. They bought a small piece of ownership in an actual real business. A business that started somewhere, needed money to grow, and eventually got big enough that the general public got the chance to own part of it too. When I was 12 years old, I was given my first shares of McDonald's stock, and it changed my life forever because I understood what I explained here, that I owned a piece of the McDonald's Corporation. And I know this sounds silly because at the time there was not a McDonald's on every corner. There was one in our town. There wasn't even a drive-through. And it was a big deal to go there. If you won the ball game or got straight A's, you went out for a Happy Meal. I know it sounds crazy. Knowing that I was an owner of that McDonald's, I would go up, and when I got my cheeseburger, I'd also ask to speak to the manager. I'd want to know how business was going. I'd let him know that the fries, they were a little soggy. I wasn't happy as an owner of McDonald's. But again, I understood that I owned a piece of that business. And as McDonald's expanded throughout the country, throughout the world, I, as a shareholder, was benefiting. So as you go through this class, please understand, while yes, you are buying shares of stock, you are also buying parts of companies, some of the great American companies of our time, doing business all over the world. Just like our lemonade stand concept. That's how McDonald's started. That's how Apple started. That's how Google or Alphabet started. That's how Tesla started. That's how all of these companies started, with a small idea, raising capital along the way, and ultimately going public. So now you can own shares of these companies. And now you know what a stock is.